let's see. I wanted to also go over you know, a couple things here. So this is investor Anthony Scaramucci, which that name sounds really familiar. Was he a part of the Trump administration? Dismissed by President Donald Trump. He was the White House correspondent or communications director. Oh, he was one of those people who, like Caroline Leavitt, who came out. He was one of the press secretary people, I think. Okay. Investor Anthony Scaramucci, I'm just going to read this article. Investor Anthony Scaramucci says when people start missing mortgage payments, immigrants become a threat. That's not racism. That's economics. So let's go ahead and read this and see what he's thinking, because he's making the very obvious, the obvious, truth, or pointing out the obvious truth that as people's economic precarity goes down, their racism, or the attacks on immigrants and all of that stuff starts to increase, which is, that's there's evidence about that. That's just a direct one-to-one correlation. So it's nothing new, but let's see what he has to say. This is by Adrian Volanik. The rise of anti-immigration sentiment in many countries may have less to do with racism and more to do with economic frustration, says Skybridge Capital founder Anthony Scaramucci. In a recent post on X, he said that when people feel financially secure and optimistic about the future, immigration tends to become a much less important political issue. But when families start falling behind, the conversation changes. That is 100% true. These narratives have a lot more potency when people are economically not being taken care of. That is 100% the case. But the other thing that I don't know if he's necessarily going to get into, I haven't read the article or anything, is that the other thing that you have to understand is that the moneyed interest going into fewer and fewer hands, like the amount of money being accumulated into less and less hands, gives outsized influence to these people who then pump these narratives even more, because they are trying to intentionally divide the working class. Because the easiest way to defeat the working class and the easiest way to continue accumulating infinite wealth at the expense of the working class is to have the working class divided and fighting against each other. So as more and more wealth accumulates into, it's a feedback loop, right? It's a feedback loop. As more and more wealth accumulates into fewer hands, they have more power and more ability to pump racist propaganda into the ether with, for instance, like Elon Musk buying Twitter, or CBS being bought by another, who, I can't remember who, but that Zionist person or whatever, or TikTok being sold to the who was TikTok sold to? ByteDance, but I think it was Adelson or whoever, right? All of these things, they allow for them to pump much more propaganda to keep people divided, because they have accumulated. We have allowed them to accumulate all of that wealth. So it's simultaneously making people's more susceptible to those narratives, but also at the same time pumping those narratives with higher degrees, at a much higher frequency and at a much higher level than if they didn't have that much power or money. Let's see. The American Dream and Economic Anxiety. Scaramucci pointed to his father as an example of what many Americans once expected from life. My dad was a crane operator, earned union wages, putting in the time, and felt pretty good about himself, he wrote on X recently. He wasn't Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, but his kids were going to do better than him. According to, I'll just read this, I guess. My dad was a crane operator, earned union wages, put in the time, and felt pretty good about himself. He wasn't Jeff Bezos, but his kids were going to do better than him. That was the deal in the US, and he believed it. When you feel that way, you're basically agnostic. Yeah, that was back when he was back when, there were good union jobs. That's just not the case anymore. Unions were systematically destroyed by capital, and we allowed it to happen. Americans allowed it to happen. They got too complacent after the labor movement of the 40s and stuff, and they allowed it to happen. And then obviously the Red Scare propaganda really, really helped in that narrative. Like that narrative, like people bought that shit hook, line, and sinker, and they allowed themselves to be exploited at much, much higher rates because of that narrative and how successful it was. We're only just now starting to get out of like Red Scare propaganda, like in the year 2026, like 50 years after the Cold War. According to Scaramucci, that expectation used to be part of an unwritten social contract. People didn't need to become wealthy. They simply wanted to believe that hard work would create a better future for their children. When you feel that way, you're basically agnostic to immigration, he said. On the other hand, he argued rising costs and declining affordability have changed the outlook for many families. But when you're in decline, when the affordability crisis has you missing mortgage payments, skipping the dentist, watching your kids fall behind where you were at their age, the immigrants become the threat, he said. Not because they actually are, but because fear needs somewhere to land. That's economics. Scaramucci argued that politicians have benefited from this frustration, but he believes the underlying issue is a growing gap between those who are prospering and those who feel left behind. He described the situation and a smaller amount of people prospering and more people being left behind. He described the situation as part of a broader affordability crisis affecting working and middle-class families in the U.S. and other countries in the West. If you're already dealing with debt and higher everyday expenses, money problems can pile up fast. People with high-interest debt often turn to companies like Accredited Debt Relief to get their debt under control. The company held more than 1 million clients and supported them in paying off over $3 billion in debt. Eligible customers can... What is this? Is this an ad? I think this is an ad. I thought they were going to talk about how this is a shitty debt relief thing, like a predatory debt relief system. This just seems like an ad. Is this not disclosed as an ad? That seems crazy to me. I feel like they should have to say like sponsored by Accredited Debt Relief or something. I'm sorry for accidentally reading that ad without disclosing it. Scaramucci's conclusion was straightforward. That's not racism, that's economics, he wrote. And his proposed solution is equally simple. Fix the economics and you fix a lot of the rest. Unfortunately, you can't fix the economics without accumulating the power to take back the wealth that has been stolen by the Epstein class from the working class. So, once we accumulate that power through organizing and through electoralism when it's possible, and also through whatever forms of resistance are necessary, only then will we be able to actually fix the broken system. So, generally speaking, though, I agree with this assessment. It is true, but like I said, it's a feedback loop. It's not just that people get more racist or are more prone to accept racist narratives when they are in a precarious economic position. It is also that the people that we have allowed to accumulate this much power are able to pump the airwaves with that racist propaganda way more than they could before.